My lighting is
Hola, bienvenidos a todos. Gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. Esta noche vamos a tener una sesión en español y en inglés a la misma vez sobre la educación financiera con nuestra organización que nos acompaña, International Rescue Committee. Entonces, esta sesión va a ser grabada y estamos aquí de dos diferentes escuelas de Community Schools y le damos la bienvenida. Entonces, de recordatorio, esta sesión va a ser grabada y compartida con las familias de español e inglés en ambas escuelas y va a ser en español y en inglés la sesión. No vamos a cambiar de cuarto, vamos a estar en la misma sala aquí, pero va a haber traducción.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome this evening. We're here together as a combined community schools team, both at Azusa High School and Baldwin Park High School, in collaboration with the International Rescue Committee. And this workshop we have this evening is related to financial literacy. We know that we promoted that we'd be having split sessions, and but tonight we have a special treat. We're going to have it all combined with Luke Van Lant. And we hope that you enjoy this information and that you just stay with us this evening. Go ahead, Luke. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing. We're going to be recording this session, and we're also going to be posting it on YouTube, on the school YouTube channels. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maritza and Tylee, and welcome everybody. Thank you for being here and taking time out of your week to join us for this workshop. We're really grateful to be here with you. Buenos días, tardes, noches a todos y bienvenidos a este taller acerca de capacidades financieras. My name is Luke Van Lant. I work with International Rescue Committee here in LA as a financial coach. I've been with IRC since October 2019. I was born in Long Beach, currently live in LA, and I've coached over this past 2.5 years, well over 100 individuals and families, usually for 8 weeks or more. So mi nombre es Luke, trabajo con International Rescue Committee o IRC en LA desde octubre de 2019. Yo nací en Long Beach y ahora vivo en Los Ángeles. Y for tonight's workshop, we're going to be talking about how to set and achieve financial goals. I hope that if you have any questions, you feel comfortable to unmute yourself or put those questions in the chat so that if possible, we can make this more of a conversation than a class. And for some topics we'll be discussing tonight, starting off with goal setting in general before moving on to discussing budgeting and expense tracking. We're going to talk about building savings and managing debt and creating a plan for those things. And lastly, we're going to be talking about some other rules of thumb for organizing finances and other things. So el tema de hoy es cómo lograr y establecer metas financieras. Vamos a empezar hablando sobre cómo establecer metas del corto y largo plazo. Después vamos a hablar sobre el presupuesto mensual y cómo crear un registro de gastos. Vamos a hablar sobre el ahorro, la deuda y cómo crear un plan de deudas. Después vamos a hablar sobre algunas reglas de ahorro acerca de cómo organizarse las finanzas. Y al fin del taller vamos a hacer preguntas, pero por favor, si tiene preguntas, escríbanos en la charla, en el chat, o haga clic en el micrófono para hacer preguntas durante el taller. All right. When we talk about goals, and this goes well beyond finances to anything that we set our mind to here, one of the most important things at the beginning is to separate goals into short and long term. Now that could mean something different for anybody or any family, but in general, we separate those into short term, meaning 1 year or less, and long term being more than 1 year. So al principio, queremos separar las metas en el corto y el largo plazo. Corto plazo, 1 año o menos, y largo plazo, más de 1 año. Writing goals down is something that's really simple to do. It does take a few minutes out of your schedule, but there have been studies that show just the simple act of writing things down does make it more likely that you're able to achieve those goals. And the main reason probably is that writing things down, especially by hand, in comparison to typing them, it helps your brain encode or remember that information. There's something very ancient about the muscle memory of writing things down that helps us remember things. It also helps when you can hang those goals and put them somewhere where you're going to see them throughout the day, or somewhere around your house, right, in the mirror or on the fridge or something like that. And the other thing is writing goals down helps them to stay set in stone, so that when you go to update them, you can make those concrete changes. It's always very important to update goals and to not feel any guilt, because life is always changing, and as life changes, our goals change. So we don't write goals down because that's exactly the plan that we're going to follow and achieve. We do it because it gives us a direction, knowing that we will have to change those goals as we go. So nos importa mucho escribir las metas, porque hay estudios que muestran que escribir las metas nos ayuda muchísimo para recordar las metas, y también porque puede poner las metas en la casa o en la habitación, donde sea, cuando las va a ver durante el día. Nos ayuda muchísimo también porque poner las metas en concreto. Entonces, cuando necesitamos actualizar las metas, porque la vida siempre está cambiando, podemos revisar las metas y cambiar algunas cosas y conservar algunas cosas también. So, es un acto muy sencillo de escribir las metas que nos ayuda muchísimo para lograrlas. This is something, if we remember one thing from today's workshop, this is a really good thing to take away, is this idea of SMART goals. We usually start with goals that are much more vague, and this is a way of helping us to change them into something a little more concrete. So SMART stands for, the S is for specific, M is for measurable, A for attainable, R for relevant, and T for time-based. Specific, how detailed can you get in writing down what it is you want to achieve? Measurable, is it possible to measure progress for this goal? Attainable, is it realistic for you to achieve? We don't want to aim too high and we don't want to aim too low, definitely. So that's that attainable part. Relevant, this is something we'll return to, but is it relevant to you and your situation? Or is it a goal that you feel for some reason you should have, but it isn't relevant or isn't actually important to you? And T, time-based, this is the really important one, setting a period of time for yourself to achieve that goal, a deadline that helps you make progress within that period of time. And that one's related to measurable. So SMART, SMART goals, very helpful way to make those financial goals more specific. We all have goals, right? I want to build savings, or I want to keep savings, or I want to get out of debt, or I want to save for retirement. But the details of all of those goals looks very different for everybody and every family, right? So this is a way of helping us to zero in on those details. So este método de SMART goals, el S es specific o específico. Queremos establecer metas específicas y detalladas en lugar de metas más generales. Measurable, medible. Queremos seguir adelante hacia esas metas y saber cuánto progreso hemos hecho hacia las metas. Attainable, alcanzable, una meta realística que es posible lograr. El R es relevante. Queremos metas relevantes para su situación, su familia, y no metas como prefabricadas que vienen de afuera. Y el T es time-based o basado en tiempo. Queremos poner un plazo de tiempo como 2 meses, 4 meses, 6 meses, 5 años, sea lo que sea, para que nos acercamos a esa meta después de tiempo y para que también la meta sea medible. All right, so some examples here of goals we might be starting with compared to SMART goals that we might later continue with or make a little more smart using this method. On the left, we see some financial goals. I want to build savings. I want to grow my net worth. I want better credit, or I want to spend less. And some examples of ways that we could improve this. I want to build savings could turn into, I want to save $1,000 for emergencies within 6 months, right? Or maybe right now it's tax season. I want to save, $400 of my tax return in a savings account within 1 month or 2 months, right? Something like that. I want to grow my net worth could turn into, I want to pay off debt to have a positive net worth within 1 year. I want better credit. If we turn that into a SMART goal, it could look something like, I want to raise my credit score to 680 in 1 year. And I want to spend less. We could change that to, I want to change my monthly spending on eating out from $500 a month to $150 a month starting this month. Those are just a few examples. It's going to look different for everybody. And after this session, if you have time, I would really encourage you to take a seat, and if you haven't already, to write down some of these financial goals using the SMART goals method, or if you already have some financial goals down, to also take a seat, read them over, and evaluate if they are specific, measurable, time-bound, attainable, and relevant for you. So, algunos ejemplos aquí de metas más generales. Quizás yo quiero ahorrar más, quizás yo quiero crecer mi patrimonio neto, quizás quiero mejorar mi crédito, quizás quiero gastar menos. So, queremos que esas metas se conviertan en metas más inteligentes, más alcanzables y todo eso. So, por ejemplo, en lugar de quiero ahorrar más, podemos escribir una meta como yo quiero ahorrar $1,000 para emergencias dentro de 6 meses. Otro ejemplo, en lugar de quiero crecer mi patrimonio neto, podemos decir yo quiero salir de deudas o pagar mis deudas para tener un patrimonio neto positivo en 1 año. Otro ejemplo, quiero mejorar mi crédito. Quizás yo quiero subir mi puntaje de crédito a 680 dentro de 1 año. Y un último ejemplo aquí, quiero gastar menos, puede cambiar, yo quiero cambiar mis gastos mensuales en comer fuera de 500 al mes a 150 al mes, empezando en este mes. So, algunos ejemplos de metas inteligentes aquí. Y yo recomiendo que tome un asiento después del taller, si puede, y escribir, o si ya has escrito las metas financieras, que las lee y piensa en cómo cambiar esas metas a una versión un poco más específica, alcanzable, basado en tiempo y todo eso, porque entonces es más posible lograr esas metas después de tiempo. All right, I want to pause here. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. Or if you have any reflections too, or wisdom in this topic that you want to share, feel free to do so as well. Si tiene preguntas, por favor, haga clic en el micrófono, o si quiere puede escribirlas en la charla. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat, but feel free to unmute yourself as we go. And let's keep going. We're going to talk about some rules of thumb. I think that these are good rules of thumb, no matter what your financial goals are that you're bringing to the table tonight, that will help you achieve whatever it is that we're thinking about. The first rule of thumb we're going to talk about is create and follow a monthly budget. Ahora vamos a hablar sobre algunas reglas de ahorro acerca de finanzas personales para ayudar a alguien a lograr cualquier meta financiera. Regla de ahorro número 1 es crear y seguir un presupuesto mensual. Okay, you might hear the word budget and you might immediately check out or get bored, which is only natural. So we got to talk about why a budget is important. Creating a budget helps you achieve the financial goals that you set, because it means telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. The other thing I'll say here is that if you think of any business, right, any type of business, there's always some way of writing down expenses and income, of keeping things on paper in one way or another. And yet it's so uncommon for us with our personal finances and in our personal lives, which when you step back and think about it, doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Your life and your goals for yourself and for your family, more important than any business. And so we're taking a lesson from how businesses help grow and survive into the future, and applying it to our own goals that we have for ourselves. So, ¿por qué un presupuesto? Queremos crear un presupuesto porque el presupuesto mensual significa decirle a su dinero a dónde ir en lugar de preguntarse a dónde se fue. So, es muy importante, es una herramienta fantástica. Puede pensar en cualquier negocio o empresa que usa un sistema de mantener los ingresos y gastos en papel o en la computadora. Queremos usar esa herramienta que ayuda a cualquier negocio o empresa para sobrevivir y crecer. Queremos usar esa meta y para nuestras propias finanzas y finanzas personales. So how to budget? This is a habit. This isn't something we do once and it works for us forever. So this is a habit that we do every month, and we're going to talk about these steps in more detail. Step 1 being create your budget for the month. Step 2, tracking spending during the month, which is usually the tricky one. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Step 3, compare your actual spending or actual expenses with your plan from the start of the month with your budget. And step 4, use your actual expenses to adjust your budget for the next month. So if we're following these 4 steps and following this habit, like any habit, it's going to get easier as time goes by, but also your budget is going to get more exact, right? It's going to better show what your actual spending is. Probably in that first month, there's going to be some surprises, some things that we write down that don't actually reflect how life is going. So these are the 4 steps. We'll talk about them in more detail in just a second. So presupuestar como un hábito. Hay 4 pasos aquí y vamos a hablar sobre cada uno de estos pasos en más detalle. Paso número 1, crear su plan o su presupuesto para el mes. Paso número 2 es crear un registro de gastos o escribir sus gastos durante el mes. Paso 3, compare sus gastos reales con su presupuesto o su plan. Y paso número 4 es usar los gastos reales para mejorar su presupuesto para el próximo mes. So, quizá como cualquier hábito se convierte en más fácil cuando los meses pasan y todo eso. También quizás en el primer mes el presupuesto es un poco menos exacto. No es tan concreto, hay algunas sorpresas al fin del mes, algunos gastos que no, o quizás gastamos más o menos que habíamos escrito en el presupuesto. Bueno, el mes número 2 o 3, el presupuesto se convierte en más concreto, más relevante a su situación real y su vida. So step 1 is creating the plan, creating the budget. There's a different way of doing this for everybody. We're going to show some tools, but some people prefer on the phone. Some people it's the computer. Some people it's printing things out and writing it in by hand. Some people it's getting a notebook and drawing it all out for yourself. So if there's one way that hasn't worked for you in the past, that's okay, because there's probably some way of making this habit easy for you. So for creating this budget, we start by writing your monthly income. And if it's flexible, you can write what you expect it'll be, or you can write a few different levels, maybe like a normal, a best case, and a shoestring budget if your income changes quite a bit. Then we write our expenses separated into different categories, such as housing, food, personal expenses, things like that. Then we subtract our expenses from income. If the number is positive, then you get to decide what to do with the extra. You can save it, you can throw it at your debt, whatever it might be. If the number is negative, then we got to start there and figure out a way to get that number positive. Sometimes it's by changing certain expenses. Sometimes it's a longer term fix for our income and our source of income. But that's step one, is creating our plan at the start of the month. So paso uno es crear un presupuesto para el mes que viene. Empezamos a escribir sus ingresos mensuales, y si los ingresos son flexibles, entonces queremos escribir quizás 3 opciones, quizás los ingresos normales, los ingresos como best case scenario, algo así. So, si los ingresos son flexibles, no se preocupe, porque puede escribir algunos niveles, y el próximo mes quizás es un poco más fácil estimar lo que va a hacer. Número 2, vamos a escribir los gastos separados en diferentes categorías, como la vivienda, como la comida, gastos personales, deuda, tarjetas de crédito, cosas así. Y después, ingresos menos gastos. Si el número es positivo, podemos ahorrar o podemos decidir lo que hacer con este dinero. Pero si el número es negativo, los gastos son más que los ingresos, necesitamos hacer algunos cambios al presupuesto. Quizás podemos cambiar algo en el lado de gastos, o quizás hay algo que necesitamos cambiar en el poco más largo plazo en el lado de ingresos. Pero sea lo que sea, y después o de vez en cuando uno necesita ser muy creativo o creativa con este proceso, pero siempre hay algo o algunas cosas que podemos cambiar si este número es negativo, para permitirnos ahorrar o algo así. So the second step here is you track your spending during the month to follow your budget. This is the hard part, I think, for most of us. We can write a budget at the start of the month, but when it comes to actually keeping track of expenses is where we fall off the horse. So the important thing is setting a time to do this, either once a week, maybe on the weekends or on a day you have off work, or once a day, right? It may seem like it's more work once a day, but a lot of times it really isn't. Less receipts to keep, or less to scroll through on your bank statements and things like that. So if one isn't working for you, then try the other, right? But it's important, I guess, that there's a rhythm here and we decide when we want to do this. So paso 2 es escribir los gastos o crear un registro de gastos. Y es, en mi opinión, lo más difícil en este proceso. Por eso es muy importante decidir cuándo quieres tomar un asiento y hacer esto. Quizás una vez a semana, en los fines de semana, o cuando descansa del trabajo. O quizás cada día. Quizás cada día es más fácil porque hay menos, ¿cómo se dice?, recetas o recibos que necesitas guardar, o menos gastos en su estado de cuenta, right? Para mí, yo lo hago una vez cada semana, es lo más fácil, pero yo he conocido a personas también que prefieren hacerlo una vez cada día, 3 minutos, 5 minutos, escribirlos, y es lo más fácil. Step 3, this is where we compare our actual expenses with the budget. And the question you want to ask here is, what surprised you, right? How accurate was the plan? We do this not to feel any sense of guilt, right? I think it's helpful sometimes to think of, like, if you were the financial coach and you were doing this for somebody else, what would you recommend? What would you point out, right? But at this step 3, this is at the end of the month, we compare how much we actually spent with our plan from the start of the month. So paso número 3 es comparar sus gastos reales con su plan al principio del mes. Y quiere preguntarse qué te sorpresa sobre los gastos reales durante el mes, ¿verdad? No queremos sentirnos como culpa o algo así durante este proceso. De vez en cuando nos ayuda a pensar sobre ese proceso como si usted fuera el asesor financiero dando consejos a alguien diferente, quizás es un poco más fácil ser objetivo o objetiva en este caso y no sentirse ese sentimiento de culpa o de preocupación, ¿verdad? And step 4, the last thing here is that we use this comparison to make our budget better for the month ahead. At this step 2, we want to decide or think about, okay, you know, if it's the end of March and we're creating a budget for April, is there anything different happening in April that didn't happen in March? Is there a big Easter party, or is there somebody's birthday or something? I don't know, right? But there might be some other expenses that you want to make that are a part of your plan that weren't a part of the previous month's plan. So paso 4, el último paso aquí es usar esa comparación para mejorar su presupuesto para el próximo mes. Y en este paso también, al fin del mes, quiere preguntarse si hay algunos gastos nuevos en el mes que viene para escribir en su plan financiero, quizás una fiesta, un cumpleaños, algo así, sea lo que sea. Cada mes es diferente, so queremos cambiar el presupuesto así también. So what way of budgeting works best? Like I mentioned, there's lots of different ways to do this. And there are some tools here that I think are very helpful. I believe we're going to be able to send the slides out for this. So, okay, so anybody who's on, we'll have the links, but if you're watching the recording, for example, or you weren't registered for tonight, my contact information will be at the end. If you want, you can send me a message and I can send these things along. So a few things here for examples for a budget. One of them is a printout from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is a really helpful budgeting tool that helps you divide it up for types of income and categories for your expenses. And so this is something, if you want to print out a budget and fill it in by hand, I would really recommend that you consider using this tool or something similar that you find online. Next, there's an Excel. So if you're comfortable on the computer, I think this is a great way to make it easier on yourself if you're comfortable using Excel or Google Sheets, where you can download this Excel template that gives you automatic totals for all your expenses, right? So if you're writing down, okay, I'm going to spend, you know, 1,500 on rent, 50 for electricity, blah, blah, blah. Then you don't have to add it up at the end. If you have this on the computer, it creates those totals for you. And you can just leave the expenses that you know are not going to change, just leave them in for the next month, right? It means that there's less for you to do when you're updating your budget for the month that comes. So, so if you're comfortable on Excel or Google Sheets, feel free to download this. If you aren't comfortable, you might still want to download this because it's all done for you, right? You just have to download it and put the numbers in. You don't have to create anything yourself. And the last thing here, if I go back to our slides, there we go. This is an app that is really helpful for a lot of people for creating a budget. It's something that I use that helps me for tracking expenses. And it's an app called Mint. If you're familiar with TurboTax, if you ever use TurboTax for your taxes, this is the same company that's called Intuit. If you download Mint, it's free. You can log in to your bank account through Mint. And if you have any credit cards or things like that, or any other bank accounts, right? Maybe it's you and your spouse have separate bank accounts, for example. If you're trying to create a plan for your household and you want to put everything for your household together in one place, this is a really helpful tool to do that. It kind of creates like an automatic little budget for you and little pie graphs and things like that. But it also puts a list of expenses and transactions all in one place for different accounts or credit cards that you might have. So that's the use for me, right? I want to be able to look at a list of transactions and see my bank account as well as my credit cards and see everything in one place. So great tool. It's free. Again, no downside, even if you're not very comfortable with the phone apps. You can download it. It's something that I use. It's a reputable company, Intuit. So so you don't have to feel too worried about logging into your bank account through this app. Those are a few tools. If one of them isn't working for you, then try another one, right? So un resumen muy breve de esto. So hay algunas herramientas aquí que te pueden ayudar para crear un presupuesto. Uno es un presupuesto que puedes imprimir y llenar proveído por el Departamento de para la Protección Financiera del Consumidor de los Estados Unidos. So, puedes imprimirlo, llenarlo en diferentes categorías de ingresos y gastos. Una opción aquí es una plantilla, ¿cómo se dice? De Excel. Se puede bajar o descargar este presupuesto en Excel y llenar los números aquí. Entonces es muy fácil usarlo porque los totales o todo está añadido automáticamente. So no necesita hacer mucho en este paso, y también los gastos que no van a cambiar en el próximo mes no necesita cambiar todo o crear un presupuesto completamente nuevo para el mes que viene. So recomiendo que lo baje o descargue porque es una herramienta fantástica. Y la última recomendación aquí es una aplicación móvil que se llama Mint, que te ayuda a crear un presupuesto mensual automáticamente en su celular. Solo necesita bajar la aplicación, iniciar sesión con sus cuentas bancarias a través de la aplicación, y entonces hay un presupuesto y lista de transacciones que está aquí automáticamente. Es una herramienta que yo uso y es una compañía con una buena reputación. Esa compañía Intuit también provee el servicio de TurboTax. So si alguien está usando TurboTax para completar su declaración de impuestos, es la misma compañía. So esas tres herramientas te pueden ayudar muchísimo para planificar las finanzas. Same for expense tracking. And again, we'll be sending this out. But if you were not registered for tonight, feel free to wait until the end and you can message me over email, or my cell phone number will be there. Same thing, Mint is here, the phone app. There's an Excel sheet that you can download for expense tracking as well. And then there's also a handy expense tracking sheet also provided by the CFPB that helps you divide up your expenses by week, right? So week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5 for the month. And then on the left, everything is divided up by category here: cell phone, debt payment, eating out, etc. So algunas herramientas aquí también para crear un registro de gastos. Incluso este registro de gastos que te ayuda a escribir gastos de semana 1, semana 2, 3, 4, 5 del mes en diferentes categorías. All right. Any questions? Algunas preguntas, or if you want to share something, your experience with budgeting or something that's worked well for you in the past that we didn't already talk about, feel free to click on unmute. Si quiere compartir algunas reflexiones, algo así, haga clic en el micrófono.
Hello, this is awesome information. Thank you so very much. So my question is, actually for the last 3 years, I've been keeping track of my utilities, my rent, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But I never account for my groceries, my gas, eating out, and birthday presents. How do you, so groceries, how do you, I don't know how to budget for that. I just kind of, I don't have a budget, so I don't know how much I spent till the following month when I go back and look. And I've been trying to use my my credit card or an ATM card just so that I could track the expenses. Mm-hmm. But like birthday presents or wedding presents, how do you account for things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for birthday presents or wedding presents, it's at the start of the month, if we're creating a plan on paper in some way, just doing an estimate for what that might be. But for groceries, I think we can zero in on it a little more. And the way that works best for me, in all honesty, is with an expense tracking sheet like this one. downloading it from Excel and putting it, on Excel or Google Sheets. It's a little blurry here. It might be hard to see, but you can enter in different categories here. And one of them can be groceries, and maybe one of them is eating out. And then, like you said, right, at the end of the month, when you're looking back, after you go through this process a couple of times, you're going to start to realize, how much on average we're spending on groceries, right? And that'll help you create the plan for the coming month. So if you are able to look back through bank statements, I know it's sometimes easier said than done. Sometimes that line doesn't tell us very much, but that could be a good way if you want to just look back at February, for example, and see roughly how much we spent. But that's the thing too, is, we're aiming to keep things roughly on target here. And over time, we're going to be able to create a budget for these things that's a little more exact. So starting out, just kind of think of it as you're keeping track of those things, and you're looking back at the end of the month to see what's going on average, and using that information to help you create over time a better and better plan. So I think that's something that's worked for me. But again, if you're trying to do it one way and it's not sticking, just try something different, right? Because it's going to be something different for everybody. So does that kind of answer, or is that maybe something that might help?
Yes, I created my own Excel sheet, but like I said, it doesn't have that. So I'm looking forward to getting that link to be more specific.
Yeah, sure thing. The other thing too, and I'm biased here because I'm a financial coach, but it helps with the talking part of it, right? So sometimes it's just helpful to, if expense tracking isn't working, or if it's hard to stay accountable for it yourself, either if it's a conversation with a friend or a family member, or there are lots of nonprofits out there like ours, and a lot of other services out there where you can sit down with somebody who's not there to tell you what to do with your finances, but is mainly just there to ask questions and kind of help you put the pieces in place for those goals you want to achieve, right? So I think that's the other big part of it, is just like any habit, it's a lot easier to have it stick if there's communication in one way or another. Either that's kind of easy to locate in your own life, or financial coaching, plenty of ways to find that for free. So that's the other thing, just, that might be helpful in this topic. Yeah, but it was a great question. Thank you so much. Any other? Yeah, maybe.
Sorry, I have one more.
Yeah, please.
So on the same note, for say vacation, the very last spreadsheet you use, or a sample for groceries. So that's like tabs that you can add in. And how do you usually, shame on me, my vacations, I charge everything to the credit card and I start paying back when I come back. So how do you start saving for that? Or do you break it down monthly, or how do you know how much you're going to spend? Like, how do you create a budget for a vacation?
It's a great question. I mean, you're definitely not alone in that, right? So I think that one thing we'll talk about in a minute is how we can organize savings, and it might be helpful. Let's say you want something on hand for emergencies, and you're also trying to save for that vacation that's coming up in 6 months. You might want to separate those things so that we don't end up wiping out our vacation savings just because our car breaks down, right? The other thing we'll also be talking about is maybe setting up, if you have a checking account and a savings account, you're setting up an automatic transfer from one place to another to savings every time you get paid, right? So those are a couple of things we'll explore in more detail, but I just want to quickly translate this one because I think it's a really great question. So la pregunta es si uno está tratando ahorrar para un viaje, cómo hacer esto y cómo no poner este viaje en una tarjeta de crédito, algo así. So una opción es organizarse los ahorros en diferentes lugares. Por ejemplo, quizás una alcancía para ahorros o una cuenta de ahorros, o disculpe, una alcancía para emergencias o una cuenta de ahorros para emergencias y otro lugar o otra cuenta de ahorros para un viaje. Una otra opción, si uno tiene cuenta de cheques y cuenta de ahorros, es poner una transferencia automática entre la cuenta de cheques a la cuenta de ahorros cada vez que recibe su sueldo. So, si es cada quincena, cada semana, algo así, un poco de dinero que transfiere a la cuenta de ahorros. So, entonces, después de tiempo, el balance en su cuenta de ahorros está subiendo poco a poco automáticamente. Si necesita usar el dinero, está allí y puedes agarrarlo si necesita, pero si no, el balance está subiendo poco a poco después de tiempo. All right, thanks for being patient there. It's a great question. And again, if you want to follow up on this after in any more detail, or you're interested in coaching, feel free to reach out, because that's one thing where, you know, it's kind of hard to sum up in a workshop setting, but it's such a great question. So, all right. Any other questions from the group, or are we all good? All right. So, regla de oro número 2, or rule of thumb number 2, is create a plan for net worth, not just monthly income and expenses. Crear un plan para su patrimonio neto, no solo los ingresos y gastos. Okay. So, what does net worth mean? Net worth is total assets minus total liabilities. What does that mean? This is what you own minus what you owe. So if the budget is for a period of time, it's a guide for a month or a certain period of time. This we're looking at, this is a snapshot in time, right? Net worth o patrimonio neto, ¿qué significa? Activos totales menos pasivos totales. Activos significa lo que dueña, ¿cómo se dice? Lo que tiene. Y activos es lo que debe. So so let's talk about assets briefly. Some assets we would call tangible assets. It's easy to put a number on these things. This would be savings, objects with value like a car or a house, investments, savings account for education, all those things. There are also intangible assets, right? Skills that you have, your social and professional network, your neighborhood, right? These are also assets, but they're not what we're talking about tonight, because it's much harder or impossible to put a number on those things, but they're still important. So I want to make sure that we mention them here. So activos, algunos ejemplos de activos tangibles, ahorros, una alcancía, objetos que tienen valor como un carro o una casa, inversiones, cuentas de jubilación, algo así. También unos ejemplos de activos intangibles, habilidades, su red social o profesional, su comunidad. Esos son intangibles porque es muy difícil poner un número ahí. So, en este taller no estamos hablando sobre esas cosas. Vamos a enfocar en los activos tangibles y que significan para el plan de patrimonio neto. And then some examples of liabilities here would be credit card debt, would be student debt, a car loan, payday loans, money we owe to family members, or even a mortgage, right? These are just some examples, a store charge card, for example, all types of liabilities that we want to include in our plan for net worth. Algunos ejemplos de pasivos, deuda de tarjetas de crédito, deuda estudiantil, un préstamo de carro, un payday loan o préstamo de día de pago, dinero que debemos a familia, sea lo que sea, todos esos son ejemplos de pasivos. All right, this I think is a really good roadmap when we're talking about creating a plan for net worth. Again, like with budgeting, it's going to be something different for everybody, right? So this isn't gospel. This is kind of a framework that you can use to then create your own plan. But I do think that there are some really great nuggets of wisdom that we can take away from here. This is the 7 baby steps. You'll hear about this and you'll see it online in different articles or on podcasts and things like that. And we're going to talk about a few of the steps, the first 4 for these baby steps shortly. So estos 7 pasos de bebé se llaman, o mini pasos, para lograr o para crecer su patrimonio neto. Vamos a hablar sobre los primeros como 4 pasos en este plan. En mi opinión, es un plan que tiene mucha sabiduría, pero para cada uno de nosotros el plan puede ser un poco diferente. So, no se preocupe si quiere cambiar algunos pasos aquí para ser más relevante a su situación o su vida. So step 1 here, baby step 1 is just going to be it's simple, but it's not easy, right? Save $1,000 for emergencies. You can use the budget like we've talked about to help decide how much you want to save each month and how long this step is going to take. Or since it's tax season, maybe we can hit that $1,000 target pretty quickly. And then it's a question of how do we keep contributing to maintain that target, right? $1,000 because it will cover, most car breakdowns, most kind of minor emergencies. This is something that'll help us get through just starting out, right? And then we'll talk later about how we kind of continue with this goal. So paso número 1 en este plan es ahorrar $1,000 para un fondo de emergencia o solo para emergencias. Es sencillo, pero no es fácil. So va a usar su presupuesto mensual para decidir su meta cada mes, lo que quieres ahorrar, y también durante, o si estás completando una declaración de impuestos para el 2021, quizás va a recibir un reembolso o algunos créditos y puede ahorrar una parte de esto para ayudarte a lograr la meta un poco más rápido. So then the question becomes, where do you keep these emergency savings so that they're both accessible and secure? I guess I didn't have an answer here. Well, I generally think that a savings account is the best way where you can grab them easily if you need to take those savings out, but it's also secure. You're not at risk of that money getting stolen, for example, or anything like that. And maybe it's a little one extra layer of keeping things separate than if there's cash laying around your house and it's easy to dip into that when we want to go spend it on something. So la pregunta aquí es dónde guardar sus ahorros para una emergencia para que estén seguros y accesibles también, o accesibles. En mi opinión, una cuenta de ahorros es la mejor opción. Algunos nosotros prefieren guardar ahorros en casa, en una alcancía, algo así. Pues obviamente es mejor guardar ahorros en casa que no tener ahorros. Pero en mi opinión, una cuenta de ahorros es una herramienta fantástica, un poco más seguro. And the thing here is that there are lots of options for savings accounts that don't charge you a monthly fee. So if in the past you've had a savings account and you got frustrated by the monthly fee, which makes sense, just know that there are other options, or maybe with your bank, there's a way to waive the monthly fee. For example, sometimes just transferring money from checking account to savings account automatically, setting up that automatic transfer gets rid of the monthly fee. So si tenías una cuenta de ahorros en el pasado y le estaba cobrando una tarifa mensual para tener esa cuenta de ahorros, no se preocupe, hay opciones para cuentas de ahorros que no te cobran ninguna tarifa mensual. O también con Banco de América, por ejemplo, y los bancos más grandes, te cobran una tarifa mensual, pero hay opciones para evitar la tarifa mensual. Por ejemplo, una transferencia automática desde cuenta de cheques a cuenta de ahorros, o mantener como un balance mínimo en su cuenta, como $500 promedio o 1,500, algo así, depende del banco, right? Pero hay opciones para cuentas de ahorros que no te cobran ninguna tarifa. All right. Step 2 here is pay off debt. Again, sounds real simple when we're in a workshop like this, but it's definitely not easy. And for everybody, there's going to be a plan, a different plan for this. And it takes, you know, not just creating a plan, but a real commitment to this plan and updating this plan consistently, because this is a step that, depending on the situation, can definitely require some stamina. So the reason why we have prioritized saving $1,000 right at the start is because if we start throwing money at debt and then an emergency happens and we don't have any savings, what's going to happen? We need to take out more debt from somewhere or another, right? So that's why, that's one of those pieces of wisdom I think in this that's important, is if one of your goals is to pay off debt, but we need to get something saved for emergencies first, then we want to kind of set that goal of getting out of debt off to the side for the time being until we have that nice foundation that's going to help us follow through on the goal of getting out of debt. So paso número 2 es salir de deudas o pagar las deudas. Y es importante al principio empezar con paso 1 y ahorrar $1,000 para que no se endeude otra vez cuando estás tratando de salir de deudas, right? Si no tienes ningún fondo de emergencia, probablemente, disculpe, te vas a endeudar otra vez si una emergencia sucede. So, es muy importante, bien importante empezar con paso 1 y después seguir adelante a paso número 2 aquí. This snowball method for paying off debt, this is, again, not something we came up with, but it's a real good nugget of wisdom here. For the majority of us, it helps us start with the smallest debt, and then the second smallest, and then the third smallest, and we want to finish with the biggest one. If that's a car loan, if that's, you know, whatever that might be, right? So why do we do that? We get a nice psychological boost when we pay off a debt completely, and that helps us to stay the course and keep our progress up. A lot of times we, you know, if you're, you know, more math minded, you would try to attack the debt that has the highest interest rate and is charging you the most interest, which is a great idea. But sometimes it helps if we just think of, okay, what's the smallest debt? And I'm just going to throw money at this until it's gone, and then start with the second and third and on and on. So este método que se llama bola de nieve o método de bola de nieve significa que vamos a empezar con la deuda más chiquita y después continuar con la segunda deuda más chiquita y la tercera, etcétera, y terminar con la deuda más grande. ¿Por qué hacemos esto? Porque hay un impulso psicológico, como se dice, más motivación cuando pagamos una deuda en total. So, está ayudando a sí mismo si estás pagando una deuda chiquita en total y después siguiendo adelante a la próxima. Si estás pensando sobre qué deuda o cuál es la deuda que tiene la tasa de interés más alta, ya es una buena manera de planificar para esto, pero en el otro lado quizás la deuda con una tasa de interés más grande es una deuda muy grande, como una tarjeta de crédito con un balance muy alto. So, mejor empezar con la deuda más chiquita y, en mi opinión, usar este método de bola de nieve para crear un plan de deudas. This is, I feel it's necessary to mention here that it's easy to talk about in a workshop, but it's difficult, right, to pay off debt, especially if it's been a habit, which for so many of us is the case. And there are many things that factor into this. There are so many advertisements out there that encourage us to buy things on credit, electronics, furniture, everything, right? You see stuff online too. It's like more and more where it's like pay in 4 installments and it's interest free. Credit card companies charge high interest rates, basically higher than ever, that help keep people in debt if you're just able to make the minimum monthly payment. And then the cost of living in California too. It goes without saying, right, that to live in LA County means that certain expenses are much higher than other parts of the country. We love it here, but that's what it is. So there are lots of factors that not only drive people to take out debt, but that make this process more challenging. And it's important, I guess, to just stare those in the face because they're real. And it's not going to help ignoring them or pretending that that isn't there. And so, but all that said, it doesn't make it impossible, right? It just means that this is something you have to take into account. That's part of your plan. And you want to be realistic about that. These are obstacles that all of us are facing together. So, pagar deudas aquí, salir de deudas no es fácil. Es sencillo aquí en el taller hablar así, pero no es fácil. El costo de vida en California es muy alto. So estamos gastando mucho en housing, en la vivienda, en gasolina, sea lo que sea. También hay muchos anuncios y cosas así en la cultura que dicen, ok, compra esa cosa con crédito, right? Muebles, electrónicos, sea lo que sea. Y también tarjetas de crédito te cobran una tasa de interés muy alta hoy en día. So, esos obstáculos existen y no nos ayuda o pues para crear un plan para salir de deudas es muy importante ser realístico. ¿Qué podemos controlar y qué no podemos controlar? Esas cosas no podemos controlar, pero son obstáculos reales, right? So, dicho esto, no es imposible salir de deudas. Hay muchas cosas que podemos controlar en ese proceso y es importante ser realístico o realística sobre las cosas que no podemos controlar. So look, if you want to meet with a financial coach, IRC, our organization, we offer this financial coaching service. It can be really helpful just to talk with somebody one-on-one about these things. It's wherever it's coming from, I think it's just important to have these conversations. It can be a taboo sometimes to talk about money. And so services like ours are here so that we can kind of try to break that taboo a bit and have those conversations. So, si quiere, ofrecemos el servicio de coaching financiero o asesoramiento financiero. Y es importante hablar sobre estos temas porque es un poco tabú hablar sobre dinero en esa cultura y servicios como nuestros están tratando de evitar ese tabú y tener esas pláticas. So, yeah, again, contact information is at the end. I would highly encourage you to reach out. And then moving on to step 3, that would be saving until, so let's say we have $1,000 in the bank. We've just finished paying off those pesky credit cards and things like that. Now we want to continue building up that emergency fund until it gets up to a little more solid of a foundation. And that's usually going to be 3 to 6 months of expenses. So después de terminar paso número 2, pagar esas tarjetas de crédito o lo que sea, queremos seguir ahorrando un poco más en un fondo de emergencia hasta que tengamos como 3 a 6 meses de gastos guardado para emergencias. So 3 months, why 3 months? If somebody loses a job, right, and you have 3 months of savings there, you have so many more options when it comes to, well, what's your next step, right? I think that's the most simple one. You don't have to immediately pivot and find the quickest thing. You have some time to really reevaluate and figure out what your next step is. And in general, it just helps you so much to not stress about money. I guess that's kind of the overarching theme of this workshop is how do we stress less about money? And whether it's $1,000 in the bank or 3 months of expenses in the bank, this is something probably the biggest thing that we can do to not stress about money. It won't solve all of our money problems, right? But it will reduce a lot of the stress or uncertainty that we feel around this topic. So este paso es muy importante porque lo que sea, $1,000 en la cuenta o 3 meses de gastos en la cuenta, nos ayuda muchísimo para no estresarse tanto, tener un fundamento, como se dice, un poco más fuerte. Y el tema de hoy, por lo general, es cómo no estresar tanto sobre dinero, y es un paso muy importante para lograr eso. And then step 4 in this plan is you want to invest for retirement. In those 7 baby steps, it says save 15% of your income for retirement. I think it comes down to the budget and whatever you're able to put toward retirement. This is a topic we're not going to be focusing on a whole lot during this workshop, but if you want to follow up afterward and talk more about this topic, I'm more than happy to. Basically, a retirement account here, contributing money to an IRA, individual retirement account, or a 401k or a 403b if your job offers one. And there's a California program that's relatively new that's called CalSavers that helps people working jobs that don't offer a 401k to still have a retirement account option where you can save out of each paycheck, right? So this is for those long-term goals of we want long-term stability, we want to invest for the long term. This is where that really comes into play and becomes important here, is with investing for retirement. So paso número 4 aquí es invertir para la jubilación. Abrir una cuenta de jubilación quizás es un IRA, que significa cuenta de jubilación individual, o quizás es un 401k 401k que ofrece quizás que su empleador ofrece, o también hay un programa aquí en California que ofrece una cuenta de jubilación individual a todas las personas en California. Ese programa se llama CalSavers, y si quiere más información, el enlace está aquí en la presentación. If you want more information, the link is here, and feel free to visit this website after the presentation today. Want to make sure we don't run out of time. If we go to 7, do I have a hard off at 7:10 or is 7:15 okay? Daili, if possible, yeah.
Yeah, I think 7:15 is okay, but we do need to just try to keep it as close, just out of respect for everyone's time.
Okay, perfect. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat, but does anybody have any questions? If you want to unmute yourself, si tiene alguna pregunta, por favor, haga clic en el micrófono ahora.
I was wondering if this would be available also maybe for our kids to learn. For example, my son is available most evenings, but tonight he had Bible study. And also I had a question, well, because they need to know about credit cards in the future. They need to know how to be more responsible about not taking out loans or credit cards and stuff like that. And I was just wondering if something like that would be available for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. It's not something we learn usually in, or at least I didn't, in high school. So we do these workshops sometimes with students. Maybe we could talk about doing it in the future for students here. But in general, I think that if we send out these slides, which we're planning to, I would encourage you, if you want to just kind of like use this as a way of talking about these topics with your kids as well, if you feel comfortable kind of talking these things over. So it's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, because the same thing, you don't know about investing your money. So when you're younger, you don't think about the 401ks or anything like that, like how much you should be investing for early retirement until it's too late, and what you put in doesn't really add up as much.
Yeah.
As when you were younger. Is there a way well, you said the California, so say my son starts working when he's 16, would he be available for that California plan, or would he have to wait until he was an adult?
That's a really good question. I am not sure, but I would expect that it's for any employee through CalSavers. Actually, I don't want to say for certain. The link is here. It's just calsavers.com. And the way this program is working, at least for adults, is that you're automatically enrolled in this when you start working, and you have to kind of opt out. And so maybe check the website and see. I would expect the answer would be yes, but take a look thereafter and check. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll do my research on that. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So.
Oh, Jonathan. Luke, sorry.
Yeah.
No. Quería traducir la pregunta que hicieron. Si la información que se presenta está disponible para los jóvenes y si un estudiante empieza a trabajar antes de cumplir los 18, si puede comenzar los ahorros con calsavers.com. Y la respuesta es...
Yeah, thank you. So, la respuesta es, si alguien empieza a trabajar que no tiene 18 años, probablemente se puede inscribirse en ese programa de CalSavers automáticamente. Las personas que empiezan a trabajar, entonces no sé todas las detalles allí, pero los empleadores deben inscribirse a los empleados en ese programa automáticamente. Sí.
I'm going to interject. I looked on the website and you need to be 18 years or older. Okay. Acabo de ver en el sitio web de CalSavers, y para abrir una de estas cuentas de ahorros para retiro necesitan tener más de 18 años.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because maybe if you start working when you're 16 or 17 and then you turn 18, you would have to ask your employer to sign you up for it, right? So that's a great point. So quizás si empieza a trabajar cuando tiene 16 o 17 años, después necesita preguntar a su empleador cuando tiene 18 que se inscribe en CalSavers para su empleador compañía, right? So that's a great question. Thank you, Tylee. Since we only have a couple of minutes, there are two more rules of thumb I want to mention very quickly. One of them here is make everything automatic. Auto pay for bills, automatic transfer to a savings account each time you get paid. Things like that, automatic payments for your credit cards, right? If missed payments are a challenge for building credit. If you already have a budget and maybe like a calendar of bills or something like that, that helps you stay on top of everything. But in general, it's a great strategy to make everything automatic that you can and save the willpower and the stress for other aspects of this life, right? So una regla de oro aquí es haga todo automático, pagos automáticos para los biles, transferencias automáticos para los ahorros a una cuenta de ahorros, pagos automáticos para tarjetas de crédito también, o cualquier tipo de deuda para proteger su historial de crédito. Entonces, si tienes un presupuesto o un calendario de pagos o de facturas, está bien, y no nos estresamos tanto sobre todo esto, y podemos usar la voluntad y todo eso para otros aspectos de la vida. And one more rule of thumb here, and again, these slides are going out, so there'll be a little more information under each of these umbrellas. This rule of thumb, get organized. Again, very simple, but not easy. Having folders for different things, car insurance, right? Taxes, all of that, keeping things organized. And then the other recommendation would be, like we were talking about earlier, maybe you have one savings account for emergencies. Maybe you have one savings account for a car. Maybe you have one for vacation, something like that, right? But when everything stays in the checking account, or if everything is cash, it can just feel a lot more overwhelming, and it's harder to know actually where we stand and how much we have saved for one thing or another. So esa regla de oro aquí, organizarse. So dos recomendaciones aquí. Uno es, y no es fácil, es sencillo, pero no es fácil. Tener diferentes como carpetas o algo así para los impuestos, para la aseguranza, para los biles de luz, right? Todo esto, para que cuando necesite buscar algo, sabes dónde encontrarlo. Y también una recomendación es, y si no tienes cuenta de ahorros, recomiendo que empieces con una cuenta de ahorros, pero después quizás vale la pena tener una cuenta de ahorros para emergencias y un lugar diferente, una cuenta diferente para un viaje, por ejemplo, o quizás para comprar un carro o ahorrar para un enganche, right? So, en lugar de mantener todo en la cuenta de cheques o todo en efectivo, recomiendo que tenga un sistema de organización que funcione bien para usted. And then the last thing is just that it takes work to decide on your financial goals. So all of this said, right, I'm not the expert. Nobody else is the expert in your own life. You're the expert in your own life. And so, you know, the best way forward is to really think and evaluate and decide on these things for yourself. There are lots of tools that exist. Some of what we've looked at tonight are tools that are there to help you. But the plan is yours, right? And the goals are yours. Nobody can tell you what those goals are. So al fin del día, es difícil decidir en sus propias metas financieras, pero nadie lo puede hacer. Usted es la experta en su propia vida. Y so hemos visto algunas herramientas que te pueden ayudar sobre este tema, pero al fin del día usted necesita decidir en sus propias metas, su propio plan y seguir adelante así. Nadie puede decidir esto para usted. So that about brings us to the end of our presentation, but I do want to leave this slide here at the end with my contact information. This is my phone number here, 747-257-4654, and my email address, which is on the screen here, luke.vanlant@rescue.org. Please, if you want to continue the conversation, if you're interested in learning more about financial coaching, please reach out. More than happy to share that information. So mi número de teléfono está aquí, 747-257-4654, y mi dirección de correo electrónico está aquí también. Por favor, si quiere seguir con la plática, envíame un mensaje por texto, WhatsApp, o llámame o algo así. Y, o si quiere saber más sobre el coaching financiero, póngase en contacto, por favor. En el chat, I see, okay, thank you so much. The phone number and email is in the chat. I see one question that says piggybacking real, and I'm not exactly sure what you mean. If you're able, can you unmute yourself and explain what you mean for that one?
I've heard, I know that you discussed not using credit cards, but I've heard that someone with good credit puts, say, their child on as a user on the credit card, and then builds their credit that way. Is that a real thing? Because I don't know if that would be possible.
It is a real thing, and I actually, a lot of people say avoid credit cards. I don't think I said that during this workshop. We talked a lot about paying off debt, but I think that credit cards can be a great tool to build credit if you're using them responsibly. Yes, in short, it is possible. And we didn't talk as much about credit in this workshop today. But you know, if you have more questions about that, feel free to reach out. And but short answer is yes. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Luke, can you ask that question in Spanish?
Yeah. So la pregunta es si alguien puede poner, por ejemplo, si para crear crédito para un niño, un hijo o hija, si es posible poner como o usar una tarjeta de crédito en su nombre para hacer esto y poner el hijo o hija, la hija, allí también para que el crédito de ambas personas está está subiendo. So, si es posible, es muy importante saber cómo usar tarjetas de crédito como responsables. También, and I'll mention this in English too, también hay algunas cooperativas de crédito o credit unions que ofrecen mini préstamos de creación de crédito para menores. So si, tiene 16 o 17 años, es posible abrir es un mini préstamo de creación de crédito que está en una cuenta separada. Y es una manera muy segura para crear crédito para un hijo o hija. So to that question, one thing I forgot to mention, a lot of credit unions offer mini credit building loans for minors, for students. So that can be a great way to, honestly, probably even safer, because what if something happens with the credit card or you miss a payment or something? Like, what happens then, right? So I would encourage you, there are local credit unions that are really excellent all over LA. And if they offer that mini credit building loan for students, could be a great option to just get your son or daughter on the map with credit and use it as like a teaching tool, right? So I would recommend that you look into that. All right. ¿Algunas preguntas más? ¿Eso que no? All right. Maritza, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I think there's one more slide at the end. I don't know.
Yes, yes. Hold on. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Entonces voy a decir, I'm going to say this in Spanish. Lo voy a decir en español. Muchas gracias a Luke por ser un traductor muy hábil y poder minimizar esa presentación en inglés y en español en este tiempo breve que tuvimos. Disculpa que nos pasamos un poquito, pero sabemos que es importante responder a sus preguntas, si las tienen, y también darles la información necesaria para poder comunicarse con Luke con sus preguntas personales, y también para, si está interesado en recibir este asesoramiento personal y por teléfono, por videoconferencia, por cita con Luke y con su organización. Entonces, es una herramienta que queremos compartir con ustedes, y gracias por acompañarnos aquí. Yo soy Maritza Martínez de Azusa High School. Soy de Escuelas Comunitarias, y si gustan comunicarse conmigo, estoy en el Salón 5 y mi número de contacto es 626-815-3413 en la oficina, o por teléfono de mensajes de texto al 562-745-7500. Y I guess I can say it in English too. Hi, my name is Ms. Maritza Martinez. I'm at Azusa High School, the educational community worker there with community schools. And we want to thank you for joining us and being with us today. We want to make sure you have Luke's information with International Rescue Committee of LA. And if you want to contact him by phone, WhatsApp, he said, and make an appointment to have financial education counseling, having those sessions with him, feel free to do so. But make sure you also contact me at 626-815-3413, or text me at 562-745-7500. So I can send you the copy of the slides, send you a copy of the recording, and get you that information in case you wanted me to text it directly to you. Thank you. And I'm going to introduce my moral support, Daily Pulido.
Buenas noches, soy Daily Pulido, también de las escuelas comunitarias, pero en la preparatoria Baldwin Park. Y gracias a todos por acompañarnos esta noche. Yo estoy en esta preparatoria, parece que nomás tenemos familias hoy de Azusa High School, pero por si me quieren visitar, pueden venir al Salón 215. Y ahí está mi información. Pueden compartirla también con otros padres si los conocen que vienen aquí que sus hijos vienen a la preparatoria de Baldwin Park. Thank you everybody for coming this evening. My name is Daily Pulido, and I'm an educational community worker at Baldwin Park High School. As I mentioned right now in Spanish, I see that all of our parents this evening are from Azusa High School, but you can still share my information with other parents whose students come to Baldwin Park High School or are within the district. Thank you again. And my phone number is 562-390-0638. And I'm in room 215, so you can stop by. Thank you.
Awesome. Luke?
Thank you all so much for joining us and for being gracious as we switch back and forth from English to Spanish. Coaching is free, okay? So like all the services that we mentioned today are free. Would love to continue the conversation with you after. And thank you so much to Tylee and Maritza for everything. Mil gracias a Tylee y Maritza por invitarnos. And have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Es gratis. Los servicios de Luke son gratis.
Yeah, los servicios son gratis, yes. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us and have a great night.
Bye, all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.